Welcome to this special journey where we pause to reflect on the teachings of Jesus. A journey not just for the mind, but for the heart and soul. Take a deep breath with me, slowly in, and slowly out. Let the tensions of your day fade away and allow this moment to become one of peace and connection. We are here to explore how Jesus' teachings can bring us peace in our everyday lives, no matter the challenges we face. Whether you're feeling the weight of life's struggles or simply seeking a deeper connection to the divine, know that you are not alone in this. Jesus invites us all into a life of peace, of love, and of spiritual growth. His words, given so long ago, continue to offer wisdom that transcends time, guiding us towards greater mental peace, joy, and understanding. In this space, we'll reflect together on the practical teachings of Jesus, the way his wisdom can transform not just our spiritual lives, but our very experience of the world. We'll journey through stories, both ancient and modern, learning how the timeless lessons of Jesus have brought peace and healing to real people like you and me. So, I invite you to settle into this moment, release any tension you might be holding, and open your heart to the lessons we'll share today. Whether you're seeking peace, forgiveness, or a deeper sense of connection with the divine, you're in the right place. Let's begin this journey together, learning how to live with presence, love, and peace through the teachings of Jesus. If you feel uplifted by this message, take a moment to comment Amen below and subscribe for more content that nurtures peace and spiritual growth. Now, let's dive into our first teaching. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus teaches us to love not only our neighbors, but also our enemies. This teaching can feel like a tall order, especially when we're faced with deep hurt or anger. But love, as Jesus teaches, isn't about waiting for the perfect circumstances. It's about choosing to love in the midst of them. Imagine someone. Let's call her Mary. Mary had been holding on to resentment for years after her friend betrayed her trust. She had given everything to that friendship, and in return, she was deeply hurt. For years, Mary carried that pain, letting it affect her every relationship and decision. She found herself angry at the world, at her friend, and most painfully, at herself. But one day, Mary heard the story of Jesus on the cross, asking God to forgive those who had wronged him. "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." In that moment, she realized that forgiveness wasn't just for the other person. It was for her peace. Holding on to that pain wasn't serving her, but forgiveness could bring her the freedom she longed for. With trembling hands, Mary took the first step. She prayed to God, asking for the strength to forgive, not because the other person deserved it, but because she deserved peace. And just like that, a small shift happened in her heart. The anger that had consumed her for so long began to fade. She wasn't immediately best friends with her betrayer, but she was free. And in that freedom, she found peace. This is the power of love in Jesus' teachings. It's not about being passive or letting people walk all over us, but about choosing love and forgiveness as tools for our own healing. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the shackles of resentment. When we choose to love, even those who have wronged us, we let go of the negativity that binds us. Think about someone in your life who may have wronged you, or perhaps you are still holding on to bitterness from an event long ago. Now, imagine what it might feel like to release that burden just for a moment. What would happen if, in the name of peace, you let go? If forgiveness and love are the keys to freedom, what would it mean for your heart? Let's take another example from Jesus' parable of the Good Samaritan. In this story, a man is robbed and left for dead. Two men pass by, both from the religious elite, but it's a Samaritan, a person from a despised group who stops to help. This was a radical act of kindness, as Jews and Samaritans were bitter enemies. Yet the Samaritan doesn't hesitate to help, showing that love isn't just about loving those close to us, but even those we don't know and may even dislike. This parable invites us to expand our circle of love, to see beyond the labels we place on people, and to love in ways that transcend boundaries. When we extend kindness to others, we're embodying the love Jesus demonstrated in his life. There's a man named John who was deeply impacted by this teaching. John worked in a corporate environment where competition was fierce and kindness seemed like a rare commodity. One day, he found himself in a situation where a colleague undermined his work in front of the entire office. John was angry, hurt, and humiliated. But as he reflected on the parable of the Good Samaritan, John felt a sense of peace come over him. Instead of responding with retaliation, he chose to extend kindness, not out of weakness, but out of strength. He offered a hand to his colleague, offering help on a new project, showing that love can be a powerful force even in the workplace. That act of kindness didn't just change his colleague's heart, it changed John. He felt lighter, as though he had been freed from the chains of anger. Love, he realized, wasn't just for those who treated him well. It was for everyone, even those who didn't deserve it. In the Gospel of Mark, we find a story of Jesus and his disciples caught in a violent storm. As the winds howl and the waves crash, the disciples panic. They fear for their lives, thinking they will drown. Yet, there's Jesus, asleep in the boat. When they wake him, he speaks to the storm, "Peace, be still." And just like that, the storm calms. Jesus turns to his disciples and asks, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" This story is a powerful reminder of the importance of faith and trust, especially when life feels like a storm. How often do we, like the disciples, panic in the face of challenges? We worry about our future, our health, our relationships. We let the storms of life make us forget that Jesus is with us in the boat, even when we can't see him clearly. His presence is constant, even in the midst of life's most uncertain times. Think about a time in your life when you faced a storm, whether it was a personal loss, a health issue, or a challenging period in your career. In that moment, did you feel like the disciples, wondering where Jesus was or why the storm wasn't stopping? What might it have felt like to rest in the assurance that Jesus was right there with you, even when it seemed like all was lost? Now, let's consider a modern-day example of how this teaching can apply to our lives. Meet Sarah, a young woman who had just started her dream job when she suddenly received news that her mother had been diagnosed with a serious illness. Overwhelmed with fear and anxiety, Sarah felt as though her world was crashing down. The pressure of her job and her mother's illness felt like a storm that she couldn't escape. Sarah turned to prayer. It wasn't that she had all the answers or that the situation magically changed overnight, but in her prayers, she found a deep sense of peace, not because the storm stopped, but because she trusted that God was with her through it all. Slowly, she realized that her faith wasn't about having control over the circumstances, but about trusting in God's presence and his plan, even when she couldn't see it. Through this trust, Sarah found the strength to be present with her mother, to continue doing her work, and to face each day with a renewed sense of purpose. The storm didn't calm immediately, but Sarah's heart did. Her trust in God gave her the peace to navigate through the difficulties of life with grace and courage. Let's look at the story of David, a man who was diagnosed with cancer and told by doctors that he had only months to live. David had spent years building his business, pouring his heart and soul into his work. Now, with his life hanging in the balance, he was forced to confront his greatest fear, death. But instead of allowing fear to consume him, David turned to God. He started reading the Psalms, finding comfort in the words of King David, who had faced his own battles. One verse stood out to David. "The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters." David found comfort in knowing that God was guiding him, even in the darkest moments of his life. Though David's physical condition didn't improve immediately, he found a deep sense of peace. He began to see each day as a gift, choosing to live in the moment and embrace the love and support of his family. His faith gave him the strength to live fully, even in the face of uncertainty, and to trust that God's peace was with him, no matter what happened. How do you respond when life feels like a storm? Do you find yourself gripped by fear? Or are you able to lean on your faith, trusting that God is with you? Jesus calmed the storm for his disciples, and he offers that same peace to us today, if we're willing to trust him. What would it look like to surrender your worries to God and trust in his perfect plan, no matter what the storm may bring? In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus teaches his disciples how to pray. He gives them the Lord's Prayer, a simple yet profound model for how we should approach God. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. This prayer is not just a set of words to repeat. It's a roadmap for surrendering our hearts to God, trusting him, and asking for his will to be done in our lives. When we pray, we are not just asking for things or seeking answers. We are surrendering our own desires, control, and worries. We're acknowledging that God knows best, and his plan for us is far greater than anything we could imagine. Prayer is a moment of deep connection, a chance to lay our burdens at his feet and to receive his peace that surpasses all understanding. Think about a time when you faced something you couldn't control. Perhaps it was a decision, a relationship, or even your own emotions. In those moments, did you turn to prayer? How did it feel to surrender that situation to God, knowing that he was in control, even when you weren't sure what the outcome would be? Let me share with you the story of Anna, a woman who had struggled with anxiety and stress for years. Every day felt like an uphill battle, with worries piling up. Worries about her job, her family, and her future. Anna tried everything she could think of to manage her stress: exercise, therapy, even medication. But nothing seemed to provide lasting relief. One day, while attending a church service, Anna heard a message on the power of prayer. She realized that all her efforts to control her life were causing her more harm than good. Instead of fighting against her fears, she needed to surrender them to God. She prayed that God would take away her anxiety and guide her through the challenges she was facing. It wasn't an instant transformation, but over time, Anna began to experience moments of peace. She no longer felt overwhelmed by her circumstances because she knew she wasn't facing them alone. Prayer became a way for her to release her burdens and trust in God's provision. There's also the story of John, a man who was struggling with the pressure of running his own business. He was overwhelmed with deadlines, financial concerns, and the constant fear of failure. One evening, after a particularly tough day, John found himself on his knees in prayer, pouring out his fears and frustrations to God. As he prayed, he realized that he had been trying to carry the weight of everything on his own. In that moment, he surrendered his business, his worries, and his future to God. He prayed for wisdom, peace, and the strength to keep going. The next day, John woke up with a renewed sense of clarity. The weight he had been carrying seemed lighter, not because his problems had disappeared, but because he had given them to God. Over time, he found that prayer wasn't just about asking for things. It was about connecting with God and trusting in his timing and wisdom. Listen, you ever found yourself in a place where you've tried everything to solve your problems, only to realize that what you need most is to surrender them to God? What would it look like for you to bring your struggles to him in prayer, allowing his peace to fill your heart? Jesus prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane, asking God, "Not my will, but yours be done." In doing so, he modeled for us the power of surrender and the deep peace that comes from trusting in God's plan. One of the most powerful and challenging teachings of Jesus is the call to forgive. In the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus tells his disciples that they must forgive, not just 7 times, but 77 times. This radical call to forgive is not about excusing or forgetting the wrongs that have been done to us. It's about freeing ourselves from the weight of resentment, anger, and pain. Forgiveness, as Jesus teaches, is a way to heal not only the relationship with others, but, most importantly, our own hearts. By choosing forgiveness, we let go of the power that others' wrongs have over us. We stop letting past hurts define our present and future. Instead, we open ourselves to the peace and freedom that come from releasing the burden of unforgiveness. Think about someone in your life who may have wronged you. Perhaps they hurt you deeply, or maybe they simply disappointed you. Are you holding on to resentment or anger toward them? How does that feeling affect you, both emotionally and physically? Jesus calls us to forgive, not because the other person necessarily deserves it, but because we deserve to be free from the weight of that pain. Let me tell you the story of Sarah. Sarah had been deeply hurt by her father, who had left her and her mother when she was a child. For years, she held on to anger and bitterness toward him. Even as an adult, she struggled to form healthy relationships because of the wounds from her past. One day, Sarah came across a passage from the Gospel of Luke where Jesus says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Sarah was struck by the idea that forgiveness wasn't just for the other person. It was a gift to herself. Forgiveness didn't mean excusing her father's actions, but it meant letting go of the anger that had controlled her life for so long. So, Sarah began the difficult journey of forgiveness. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But with time, she prayed for the strength to forgive, and she began to feel a shift in her heart. The anger that had once consumed her began to fade, replaced by a sense of peace. She wasn't sure what the future held for her relationship with her father, but she knew that by forgiving him, she had freed herself to live fully in the present. A similar story comes from a man named Tom, who had been deeply hurt by a betrayal in his marriage. His wife had cheated on him, and he felt like his world had been shattered. For months, he couldn't let go of the anger and pain. It seemed like every thought, every interaction, was colored by the bitterness he felt toward her. But one day, Tom read the story of Jesus forgiving his persecutors on the cross. In that moment, he realized that forgiveness wasn't about the other person. It was about him. Holding on to resentment wasn't hurting his wife. It was hurting him. With that realization, Tom decided to forgive her, not for her sake, but for his own peace. He prayed for the strength to let go of his pain, and over time, he found that the healing power of forgiveness brought him a deep sense of freedom. Forgiveness doesn't mean that we forget the wrongs done to us, nor does it always mean reconciliation. Sometimes, forgiveness is an internal process that sets us free from the chains of bitterness. As we forgive, we release the power others have over us and create space for healing in our hearts. Is there someone in your life whom you need to forgive? Perhaps they've hurt you in a way that feels unforgivable. But remember, forgiveness doesn't mean you're saying the hurt was okay. It means you're choosing peace over pain. It means you're choosing healing over holding on to resentment. How can you begin to let go of the bitterness and allow forgiveness to bring healing to your heart? In the Gospel of John, Jesus gives us one of the most comforting promises in all of Scripture. "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." John 14:27. This promise of peace is not just a temporary or superficial feeling. It is a deep, lasting peace that comes from knowing that God is in control and that we are never truly alone. The peace that Jesus offers is different from the peace the world offers. The world's peace is often based on circumstances. When things are going well, we feel at peace. But the peace of Jesus transcends circumstances. It is a peace that remains even in the midst of chaos, a peace that doesn't depend on the absence of storms, but on the presence of God in our lives. Think about the times in your life when you've been searching for peace. Maybe you thought peace would come when you finally achieved a certain goal, or when your relationships were in harmony. Yet even when those things were in place, did you still experience the inner peace you longed for? Jesus promises a peace that is deeper and more lasting than anything the world can offer. What would it look like for you to trust in this promise, even when your circumstances are not ideal? Let me share the story of James, a man who found this peace in the midst of a very difficult situation. James had been diagnosed with a chronic illness that left him physically drained and emotionally discouraged. The doctors couldn't give him a clear answer about his future, and the uncertainty weighed heavily on his heart. One night, James found himself sitting in his living room reflecting on his life. He felt the weight of his condition, but as he sat there, he recalled the words of Jesus, "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give you." In that moment, James realized that peace wasn't something he could find by fixing his illness. It wasn't about waiting for his circumstances to change. It was about trusting in God's presence, even in the midst of uncertainty. Over time, James found that the more he focused on the peace of Jesus, the less he was consumed by his fear and worry. His circumstances didn't magically change, but his heart did. He felt a sense of calm and trust that transcended his physical condition. The peace that Jesus promised was real, and it carried him through each day, giving him strength even when he didn't know what the future held. Another example comes from Lisa, a woman who had experienced deep grief after the sudden loss of her husband. For months, Lisa struggled with overwhelming sadness, and it felt like the weight of her grief would never lift. She was constantly in turmoil, searching for peace, but not knowing where to find it. One day, a friend shared with Lisa the words of Jesus in John 14:27, reminding her that Jesus offers a peace that the world cannot give. Lisa didn't understand it fully at the time, but she decided to start praying for that peace. She asked God to help her trust that His peace would fill the empty spaces in her heart. As she prayed, Lisa began to feel a subtle shift. The pain of her loss didn't disappear, but she felt a deep sense of comfort and peace, as though God was gently holding her through her grief. She found that even in her mourning, Jesus' peace was present. It wasn't a peace that removed the storm, but a peace that calmed her heart in the middle of it. When you are facing storms in your life, whether they are emotional, physical, or relational, do you trust in the peace that Jesus offers? This peace isn't about having all the answers or avoiding hardship. It's about knowing that God is with you and that His peace can still be present no matter the situation. How can you embrace this peace, even in the midst of your struggles? As we come to the end of this journey, let's take a moment to reflect on the powerful teachings of Jesus that we've explored together. His message of love, faith, forgiveness, and peace is not just a set of abstract ideas. It is a practical guide for how we can live with greater peace, joy, and spiritual growth, no matter what life throws our way. We've seen how Jesus calls us to love even our enemies, to forgive those who have hurt us, and to trust in God's plan, even when the storm is raging around us. We've learned that peace isn't something we need to achieve or earn. It's something we receive when we surrender our worries, our fears, and our pain to God. Jesus offers us His peace, a peace that goes beyond understanding and transforms our hearts, no matter what our circumstances may be. So how do we take these teachings and apply them to our daily lives? It begins with small, intentional steps. It starts with choosing love in the face of anger, choosing forgiveness in the face of hurt, and choosing trust in the face of uncertainty. It's about making prayer a regular part of our lives, allowing God's peace to fill our hearts and guide our actions. And most importantly, it's about believing that Jesus' peace is always available to us, no matter what we're going through. As you close this time of reflection, think about one area of your life where you could invite more of Jesus' peace. Is there someone you need to forgive? A fear you need to surrender? A moment where you need to trust God more deeply? Whatever it is, know that His peace is available to you. It's not something you have to chase. It's something you can embrace by trusting in His love and guidance. If you found peace and encouragement through these teachings, I invite you to comment Amen below and share your thoughts with us. If you haven't already, Please subscribe to our channel so you can continue on this journey of spiritual growth and mental peace. We have more content on the way to help you live out the teachings of Jesus in your everyday life, bringing peace and joy to your heart. Remember, the peace Jesus offers is not a peace that comes from the absence of problems, but from His constant presence with us through every storm. May you continue to live in His peace, love, and grace every day. Thank you for being a part of this journey.